Here in California, we have some of the most far-reaching climate-oriented policies, both nationally and internationally. But the question that the environmental justice community has is whether those policies actually improve the lives of communities that are most impacted by pollution. And sadly, the answer is too often no. Just to give some context, Cap and Trade is a program that established here in California that establishes an overall limit on the carbon pollution from major industrial sources of pollution like oil refineries and power plants. And so polluters or the regulated sector can reach those or comply with those caps in one of two ways: either reduce pollution, install pollution controls, or buy credits off of the market from participants who have reduced pollution theoretically below the cap, and so that others can meet the cap. The point of California's cap and trade program is the cap actually declines over time, so in theory, that's supposed to reduce emissions overall. The problem with California's cap and trade program is that it was poorly designed. So, and it was fatally flawed from the get-go. One of the major problems was the original overallocation and the continuing overallocation of credits into the market, meaning that the price of the credits have never really risen. They've hovered at the floor, the price floor, and they've never really gained value. So it's pretty cheap to just buy credits. It's always cheaper to buy credits than actually reduce your pollution. There's also a question about the legitimacy of those credits. Whether or not the credits represent reductions, pollution reductions, that would not have occurred, rather, but for the program. So what we're seeing is that there's a flood of credits in the market that may have, that represent reductions that may have occurred anyway. And those really shouldn't be credited because that just gives a windfall to polluters for reductions that we're going to make anyway, regardless of the incentive of the program. So those are kind of the structural problems. But overall, there is this ethical question of whether or not pollution is something that should be commodified. It's a social ill. It has no inherent value, and so there are deeper moral questions about that. And in many ways, the troubles we're seeing with cap and trade reflect kind of a technocratic approach to pollution control. This idea that economic theory can solve problems divorced from lived realities on the ground. We know that the majority of refinery neighbors and power plant neighbors are low-income communities of color. They're disproportionately impacted by pollution. And the trouble we're seeing is that over the course of cap and trade, pollution at the participating facilities in the sector has actually, localized pollution has actually increased. So it hasn't been, despite California's claim to, forward-thinking climate policies, there's this question of equity and distributed justice and whether those most impacted are getting benefits.